and the devil. He teaches us many other things, and they're all true. This gives us the desire to do the things that are right. This gives us the desire to be men and to stand upright and to be clean. This gives us a sense of dignity. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has done for us what no other man has done or can do.
قل أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom all praise is forever due. Peace, family, and welcome back to WHID-FM. I'm your host and your brother, Donald Muhammad. WHID-FM is your personal platform with those of us who are striving to follow the life-giving, life-saving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. By way of his star student, the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, gather right here in this virtual meeting place to ask and answer that critical question, what has Islam done for me? It's Sunday, August 15, 2021. This is season 3, episode 13. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my beloved co-host, Sister Janine Muhammad, who is also a star student in the ministry here at Muhammad Mosque number 6, under the leadership of my beloved brother, student minister Carlos Muhammad. Sister Janine.
Assalamu alaikum, family, and thank you for joining us once again on WHID-FM on this fine Sunday. We definitely want to thank you all for tuning in every Sunday and joining us to hear what Islam has done for them. Our guest tonight is Brother Rashad Muhammad, also known as Brother Boris Muhammad. He became a registered Muslim in the year 1995. He's married in the same year now to Sister Sabira for 25 years. And they also have 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. He is a registered believer at Muhammad Study Group in the city of Toronto, Canada. He held posts as a student secretary recorder, as well as conducted study circle class on Fridays in his city. He is the author of 2 books. Number 1 is The Messiah, Elijah Muhammad is Still Physically Alive. And number 2, Master Fard Muhammad, Refuting the Myths. He was born in the county of Chile, South America. So we'd like to welcome him to our show today. But before we welcome him to our show, we'd like to go back to Brother Donald Muhammad.
Thank you, Sister Janine. Yes, sir, Brother Boris, we're honored to have you back on, sir. And last time you were here, of course, you did a fabulous job talking about supreme wisdom, and you delved into that. And later on, a few Sundays later, we had Brother Dimitri Muhammad come on with back-to-back episodes. Where is he?
He actually just popped back in. He was trying to get his audio back in, but he just popped back in. So you may need to ask him your question one more time, because I think he's just got back into his video. I'm just waiting for his audio to connect. Oh, his audio connected. So yes, he might can hear you now. So go ahead and ask your question, Brother Donald.
Brother Boris, are you there? Brother Boris?
It looks like his audio is connected. I see his video is on. Let me see.
Brother Boris, can you hear me?
Yes, he can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for coming back, beloved. We can't hear him.
We just have to, I'm gonna ask him to unmute. There you go.
You good? Okay, brother. Thank you for coming back on the program. Last time you were here, you gave us a sampling of supreme wisdom. Brother Dimitri came on 2 Sundays in a row and gave us back-to-back episodes dealing with the possibility of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad being physically alive. And tonight, I believe, by Allah's permission, you're going to go back in supreme wisdom along with some more of our lessons and show us about a death plot that wasn't successful on the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's life. Is that correct, beloved?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Now,
can hear you.
Yes, sir. That is correct. I wanted to do a presentation that I had set up.
okay.
I will have to share my computer. Is that option available?
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
I just made it available.
Can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay. Share screen. There it is. Can you go back downstairs? Where's your mom? Go downstairs, please.
Then in worst case, if you want to email it to me, I can share it if it don't come through. Oh,
Can you see it now? You can see it?
It's coming up now. Yep, see it.
All right. All right, so I was asked by Brother Donald if I wanted some questions before I began. It is up to you all if you want to ask me questions. I will let you know if the questions will actually lead into my presentation, or if not, I can answer. If it's not in here, I can answer right away. But if it's in here, I'll just let the slide presentation just give the answer as I go. So are there any questions before I begin?
No, so you can actually do the presentation and we can ask the questions and answer, just so you won't have to re-answer the questions.
Okay, okay. So in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I greet the believers and the listener audience in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Well, this presentation is called The Death Plot Against Allah's Messenger, according to the Supreme Wisdom lessons and the Supreme Wisdom teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad throughout his 40 years of teaching. Let me see. Here are some foundational questions for discussion. Did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad really die of natural causes, as some have suggested? Was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was he killed? Was he murdered? What did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say regarding the said above? Can the answers be found in the lessons of Supreme Wisdom and throughout his teachings? In part 1, we want to deal with the death plot and escape of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when it was supposed to occur, at what time. Now, when we go to the instructions to the laborers, in instructions number 2, a part of it reads this: according to the Holy Qur'an 59 verse 7, the Muslims were very poor when they first started to teach Islam, and all contribution was given to Allah's apostle for him and his family's support. And what the apostle could spare, he gave to help take care of the poor Muslims that were unable to help themselves, and the other part was given to those who were confined to the labor of Islam. And soon there arose an argument among the hypocrites about the use of the money, because they thought that they should share equally with the apostle. Then Allah cast these hypocrites out and punished them for the false accusation that they had spread against the prophet, that he was seeking to enrich himself and acting unjustly to the poor and needy. And then Allah told the other laborers that he would soon enrich all of them, but at present, every effort should be to maintain the prophet in his household. The enemy then tried to stop every Muslim from helping the apostle and said he should be killed. Then Allah challenged the enemy to do so, to leave not a stone unturned in trying. This is in the 34 problems that you have, if you understand. I wanted to stop right there. Well, let's go to the problem book. We're dealing with the time of when this plot was supposed to occur. Let us read from problem number 32. It says 12 leaders of Islam from all over the planet have conferred in the root of civilization concerning the lost found nation of Islam must return to their original land. One of the conference members by the name of Mr. Osman Sharif said to the 11 members of the conference, the lost found nation of Islam will not return to their original land unless they first have a thorough knowledge of their own. So they sent a messenger to them of their own. Now the messenger and his laborers work day and night for the last 3.5 years, and their accomplishments are approximately 25,000. The messenger and his laborers are worried, for the time of laboring is mentioned and limited in said problem number 31. So they're given a limited time now. Let's deal with problem number 31. It says a lion in a cage walks back and forth 60 feet per minute, seeking a way out of the cage. It took nearly 4 centuries to find the door. Now with modern equipment, he is walking 3,000 feet per minute, and he has 3,000 feet by 2,000 miles to go yet. How long will it take him to cover this territory of said 3,000 by 2,000 miles at the above walking rate? Before I continue, I want to establish that the door here is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In Our Savior Has Arrived, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that when the lost founds were brought into the hells of North America on a slave ship named Jesus, right? When the ship left, they ran to the shores and cried out for the ship Jesus to come and return it back to their own land. Then the messenger says that they did not know that the real ship Jesus, God in person, would come. In the prophecy of Genesis, it speaks about the coming of God after a 400-year period. Remember that, 400 years. From 1555 to 1955 is 400 years, which is why I believe that this door that the lion was walking back and forth is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Let us continue. Problem number 31. As I stated, it took nearly 4 centuries to find the door. Now, for us to get the year when the enemy would try to take the life of the messenger, which is considered the limited time of laboring, we would have to solve the mathematical equation given in the set above. Now, I got these calculations from a book by a brother named Rashid Al Muhammad. I don't know if you know who he is, but the book is called NOI Decoded, and he gives the mathematical equation here. This is mentioned here. I don't know if you can see my mouse going, but 3,000 feet per minute divided by 5,280 feet, which is 1 mile, it equals 0.5681 feet. That you multiply by 1,440 minutes, which is in 1 day. 0.64 feet per day, right? You multiply that by 365 days, it will give you 298,593.36 feet per year. Now, 3,000 by 2,000 miles, as it is mentioned in the problem, it gives you 6 million square miles. You divide that by the 298,593.36 feet per year, it gives you 20 years. 20 years. Well, let us count 20 years from 1955. It will give you the year 1975, which is the limited time that the messenger was given to raise the lost founds. So we're dealing with a time when this will transpire, this last attempt on the life of the messenger. Also, in our lessons, we are given a lesson called the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's first term examination assignment. And it says that this lesson is answered very near correct, and all students should read and study it until he or she can recite it by heart. Prophet W.D. Farah. So this lesson is called the first term examination assignment. It contains 40 questions. Do these questions, 40 questions, can it refer to, or is it possible that it actually reference to a 40-year period that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the believers would go under an examination, a first term examination assignment? I believe it does. The term here, what is a term? A term is a fixed or limited period for which something, office, imprisonment, or investment lasts or is intended to last, a limited period of time or a period of time that is assigned to a person to serve. So this was the first term examination assignment, which contains 40 questions, i.e. 40 years, from 1934 to 1974. In the Theology of Time, dated July 23rd, 1972, the messenger continues regarding this 40-year period. And I quote, he sent Jonah to Nineveh, meaning Allah sent Jonah to Nineveh, according to the history of Jonah in the Bible, to call upon the Ninevites to warn them that in just 40 days and 40 nights, Nineveh would be overthrown. Why does he specify the 40 days and 40 nights? We want to find out why he did give them that length of time, because 40 days and 40 nights are used in the end of the world to compare his preaching with the end of the world and the sermon of the man there in that time. Again, we're dealing with the time he had to preach among the people, 40 years. He should have that number to give us a picture of what the end of the world's figure will look like. Jesus fasted 40 days in the wilderness. What wilderness did Jesus fast in? In a Japanese interview, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was asked the question, but how do you get instructions or teachings from him, meaning Master Fard Muhammad? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, well, he left me enough to last me for, I would say, about 40 years, and he give me instructions now, but it comes, in the ear. Now, Minister Jabril, in one of his lectures, he said that the messenger, or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, for every month that he was taught, he was to teach us a year. So he was taught for approximately 40 to 41 months. So he was to teach us for about 40 to 41 years. Again, that number 40, from 1934 or 35 to 1974, 75, 40 years. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that there are two phases of the messenger's work. Was here as it was with Moses. He's comparing himself with Moses. Moses had two phases of his work. He got his people out of bondage of Pharaoh, but he didn't have in it that which could bring to them success and progress in the nation or the country where they were going. So the book teaches us he had to go up in the Mount of God to get something like a law or get a scripture, which they had to have to be successful in a land where they can be independent. The God didn't dare give him that in Egypt, nor did he give him that soon after they had gotten across the Red Sea. But this went on for a while, and he gave it to Moses when the people were ready to go into the land that he had promised them. It would be used to guide them out of the ears and eyes of Pharaoh and his people. It was there, he received it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated in The True History of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is a book published by M.G.C. from pages 280 to 281. He says that they said here in the Bible that Jesus, after death, he went up to heaven, back to his Father. This only means this, that after the ignorant death of the knowledge of self, that then we will be united, and the messenger, God will take him to heaven with him after his mission. As we don't find the grave of Elijah, the Bible don't give it to us. We don't find when he died. Moses, it teaches us that he went up in the mountain, died, and angels buried him. Now, the last messenger is a man like Moses. Then should we expect the enemies to destroy him? Pharaoh wasn't able to destroy Moses. Now, cross-reference the above with what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated in Theology of Time lecture series about the end. We're dealing with the end of his mission, or when the end times would come. What does the end mean? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that it says that the end came 3 years after the death of Muhammad's wife. Maybe you can find it. This is in the Table Talks of Muhammad, also in 2 or 3 other places by the scholars of Islam. They have described the death pretty well. I read it years ago, but I did not ever want to say anything about it until after her death. That's dated October the 22nd, 1972. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad uses Prophet Muhammad's history, right, to give us a time of the end of when Prophet Muhammad's wife died, 3 years after the end of a certain part of that history. What was that history? At the end of that history, in Prophet Muhammad's history, which is the beginning of the Medina period, there was an attempt of Muhammad's life. 3 years after his wife died, there was an attempt of his life, but he had escaped, and Ali was actually replaced by him, and Ali was covered under the bed. When they went to kill Muhammad, the hypocrites went to kill Muhammad, and they saw that it was Ali, because Muhammad of Arabia, he had escaped the plan of his enemies. So while the messenger is relating this history and what would happen at the end, well, the end of that history compared to the end of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad describing how his wife died in 1972, 3 years after that, the end would come. So if in the history of Muhammad, right, there was an attempt of his life in which he escaped, then 3 years after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's wife died, there would also be an attempt on his life in which he would escape. It makes sense? Let's continue. Now we're dealing with part 2. Now I wanted to stop here and see if there was any questions, as Brother Donald suggested that if I went halfway through, we can ask some questions of what I spoke about, and we'll get to the next section, which is the actual death plot. Is there any questions so far on what I just said?
Yes, sir. So one question.
I cannot hear.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So one question is about the significance of the number 40. So we heard that a lot during the presentation, fasted, you know, how Jesus fasted for 40 years, where the most honorable Elijah Muhammad was taught enough to carry 40 years. What's the significance of the number 40? Is that like because of a lifetime, or what's the significance of the number 40?
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us a lesson regarding the meaning of numbers. In the number 40, you have the number 4 and you have a 0. The 0, of course, stands for nothing, but the 4 here represents a foundation. So this 40 or 4 represents a foundation which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would lay. It would be a 40-year foundation. The number 4 represents foundation and preparation. So that would be the meaning of why 4 or 40 would be used in the foundation that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad laid as a first term examination assignment. Remember, there was 2 phases of the work of Muhammad, as there was 2 phases of Moses, of which he was a man like Moses.
So when you say the number 40, is it safe to say that since the most honorable Elijah Muhammad had to teach for 40 years, that is the same for the minister, or could that be changed somehow? Or could, or is that just determined by whatever Allah chooses?
I don't want to speculate whether or not it also refers to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It may refer to him as well, that he would lay a foundation of 40 years in which at the end of that 40 years, maybe a similar death plot would occur. It is possible, but again, I don't want to assume.
Right. And another question that we got sent through was the number 6 was mentioned earlier, having to do with the 6 lessons that we were taught. Is there any correlation to the ayat 6 called the cattle, like the number 6? Is there always a correlation with the ayat in the Quran?
I don't know what ayat that is in the Quran.
That's the cattle.
That's the surah called the cattle.
The surah.
Okay. I don't know if it relates to the actual surah in the Holy Quran, but I know that the number 6 represents imperfection and incompletion according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? That is represents the number of the original man and also the number of the man that was made. It represents incompletion and imperfection. I will look up whether or not there's any relevance to the 6th surah of the Holy Quran and the 6 written lessons that we were given. I would like to study that myself.
Yes, sir. And the next question before we continue was, is there any way that we can find the, like I said, we're saying the meaning of the numbers? Like, how do you know what numbers mean what?
Oh, I actually got my lesson when I went to Savior's Day in 1996. I don't know if you will be able to get it now, but that's when I got it. I could always forward it to whoever wants it. That's all I can say about that. I don't know if it's actually given out in the classes nowadays, but I do have it. It's in my archives. I can actually send it out to who wants it, just to study and review it.
Yes, sir.
And actually, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan mentioned the meaning of these numbers, and he broke it down in one of the lectures that he did. It was a lecture series he did when he was dealing with the Knowledge of Self series. I don't know if you remember that. He would come out every Sunday and do a lecture on the knowledge of self. And he did it for a while. And it's in one of those that he actually broke down the meaning of the numbers. He went from numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the way to 9, which is completion.
Okay. I'm gonna put that in the chat so we can also look that up as well. But that's the questions we had so far.
Okay. So let me continue. So part 2 deals with the death plot of the Christ, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is actually from the book that I wrote. It's right here. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is still physically alive, and I refer to him as the Messiah in the book. And I attempted to prove that he was the Messiah and also that he escaped a death plot. So let me continue here. Now, in the problem book, I hope you all are familiar with the problem book and remember that there are references to uncle. There's a uncle of Mr. W, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's a second uncle of there's a first uncle of Master Farad Muhammad. There's a second uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad, and there's a third uncle. I want you to just keep that in mind as I continue. First, second, and third uncles. In problem number 6, we're dealing with a death plot. Problem number 6, a portion of it reads this: the average person breathes 3 cubic feet of air per hour. But the second uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad breathed 4.5 cubic feet of air per hour. 500 pills equal 1 pound, so that kills him at the age of 46. How many pounds of pills did Mr. W.D. Farad's second uncle use in 46 years? How many cubic feet of air did he breathe in 46 years? If the air value and selling price, then the third uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad would have been robbed of the atmosphere. How much air did he breathe more than the average man? Each cubic foot of air costs $10.50. How much does Mr. W.D. Farad's second uncle rob in 46 years? 20 pills cost 25 cents. How much does this amount to in 46 years? The second uncle died at the age of 46. Let us do some math. If we do this from the years 1930, when Master Farad Muhammad declared his coming, you add 46 to that, it'll give you the years 1976. If you do it from the year the Honorable Elijah Muhammad came into the temple, you add 46 to that, it will give you the years 1977. So what happened in the year 1977? What year did Minister Farrakhan start to rebuild the Nation of Islam? Who is Minister Farrakhan? Now, proof that the second uncle refers to the hypocrites around the messenger. So remember, there's the uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad, It's the second uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad and the third uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad. I wanted to go to the warning and instructions to the M.G.T. from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In one of the letters there's a part here that deals with problem number 6. And I wanted to read this. It's dated March 31, 1937. It was sent to the class, number 1 Michigan, on July 7, 1937. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad writes, "Tell the hypocrites that they are the wicked uncles of the messenger who have bought shares with the devils to take the life of the messenger for a reward which shall burn with the wicked uncle in hell. But Allah has said in problem number 6, if his life had been valued at a price sold by devils, wicked uncles, then the poor third uncle who is still asleep would have been deprived of life. But Allah is guardian of his messengers for the devils, and they're killing the prophets that is sent among them. Time was finished in 1914, and he who hath power over life and death is come. Praise his holy name, who do not value his righteous servants' lives with devil's money, nor with every soul." As we were reading in the problem referring to the second uncle, here the Honorable Elijah Muhammad refers to him as the wicked uncle, and that they are the hypocrites that wanted to take the messenger's life and actually took a price of money to do it. In Buffalo, New York, in a believers meeting, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, "I am that third uncle." This is what he said, "I am that third uncle." In the problem, let me read a part of it. It says, if the air value selling price ... then the third uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad would have been robbed of the atmosphere. How much air did he breathe on the average man? Now, these 3 dots, it is called an ellipsis. An ellipsis is also known or informally as ... is a series of, or usually 3 dots that indicates an intentional omission of a word, sentence, or whole section from a text without altering its original meaning. The word plural ellipsis originates from the ancient Greek. So the ellipsis is also called a suspension point, points of ellipsis, periods of ellipsis, or colloquially ... depending on the context and placement in a sentence. Ellipsis can indicate an unfinished thought, a leading statement, a slight pause, an echoing voice, or a nervous or awkward silence. Interesting. Now, let's consider why was the ... Why was something left out in the problem book written by Master Farad Muhammad? Could the 3 dots refer to a part of our nation of Islam history that was intentionally left out by Allah? Why 3 dots? Could the 3 dots refer to a 3-year period from 1975 to 1977? Could the 3 dots refer to a vacuum in our history from 1975 to 1977, where there was no air, breath, or inspiration? The definition of vacuum is an emptiness of space. From Latin vacuum, an empty space, vacant place, a void. Noun, use of neuter of vacuums, empty, unoccupied, devoid of, figuratively, free, unoccupied, from pi, whack, extended from a root, to leave abandoned, to give out. So I believe all can attest that the nation of Islam experienced a void, that which is empty of the Spirit of God between the years 1975 to 1977. These 3 dots can also represent a trial, as 3 represents trial, in which the nation of Islam fell into, as there was no breath, no air, or inspiration. It will bring up the best in us and the worst of us. I believe that this is the reason the 3 dots or ellipses were put in the problem. It was a problem that we had to solve. It was necessary. So why was the vacuum in our history? Because as the problem states, then the third uncle of Mr. W.D. Farad would have been robbed of the atmosphere. It was done for the rightful owner of the atmosphere or the Nation of Islam, which is the third uncle, Minister Farrakhan. The rise of Minister Farrakhan in 1977 represents the death of the second uncle. I put here Boris Muhammad, but it represents that whole community of disbelievers and hypocrites that left the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's pure teachings. If this vacuum was not put in our history, then the second uncle would have been successful, or more than he was, in robbing the atmosphere from the average man. How much did the second uncle rob in 46 years? What is the definition of rob? To rob means to rob, steal, pillage, ransack, rape, from West Germanic robba or booty. To rob, spoil, plunder. A source of the reeve is bereave from Proto-Germanic rubon, to rob, to break. So this is what happened to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam. It became a booty. It was raped, it was ransacked, it was pillaged. The second uncle was successful in robbing the air, the inspiration of the Nation of Islam. I wanted to deal with something about the third uncle and how it relates to something else in our lessons. Minister Jabril was interviewing Brother Rahman, and he put this out in Farrakhan the Traveler. Minister Jabril asked the question, when or what year was that? This was around 1970, 70 or 71, no later than that. Another time, through my own study, I found him to be a man like Moses, and Moses, according to the Bible, lived 120 years of age. And they made a reference to that one day, and he did not deny that. And another time, and he had told us this many times at the dinner table, that if Allah couldn't save him, he couldn't save none of us. So that gives me the equipment or the knowledge to believe that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is still alive. Because at still another time, I heard him say that he and Master Farad Muhammad would be backing up Minister Farrakhan, that he'd have two of them backing him up. Minister Jabril says, you heard him say that? Yes, I heard him say that. Was Minister Farrakhan present at the table on that occasion? Brother Rahman says, I think he was, but I heard him say it more than once. And he also told me he cracked Farrakhan. As we have in our lessons, the problem book, that Master Farad Muhammad cracked an atom into 10 million parts. So when he told me he cracked Farrakhan, I recognized and realized what he was talking about. Through Farrakhan being cracked, the knowledge being cracked, he would be able to get millions of our people into the fold of Islam. Now here it is in the problem book, problems number 7 and problem number 9. Problem 7 says if 1/100th of a cubic inch contains 200 million atoms, the total atmosphere weighs 11 2/3 quintillion pounds. 1/3 of 11 2/3 quintillion pounds equal atoms. Mr. Muhammad cracked one atom into 10 million parts. Then Mr. Sharif wants to know how much the 1/3 of a cracked atom weighs. Minister Farrakhan being that cracked atom, right? It asks the question, how much the 1/3 of a cracked atom weighs? What is the 1/3 of a cracked atom? Brother Farrakhan says that the 1/3 here is that 1 out of every 3 would become a hypocrite to the minister, and that would be a heavy burden. That's how heavy this 1/3 of a cracked atom would weigh, because hypocrites make the mission a very heavy task for the minister. So it is a heavy burden that he would have to endure, and of course we would have to help him in that. Now to consider that, now the 1/3 being 1 out of every 3 would become a hypocrite to the minister. Let us reflect on ourselves, right? Now in problem number 9, it says this: the average person can be robbed successfully with 1/3 of unsound brain. So we know that the believers prior to 1975 were robbed of the air, of the inspiration of the Nation of Islam, or the 40-year first term assignment, where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that he was not allowed to convert in 40 years, right? We don't want this to happen again. So the average person can be robbed successfully with 1/3 of unsound brain. The 1/3 here again is the hypocrites, that they will be robbed successfully with the help or the aid of the hypocrites that have unsound brain. The unsound brain here is similar to what Master Farah Muhammad mentioned in instructions number 1, that he challenged the enemy to do so, to leave not a stone unturned in trying. The stone here can represent 2 things. The stone here could be the believers that have a foundation like a stone, like the rock, or Peter. He had a strong foundation in the Messiah, but he could be turned. Or the stone here can represent the heart of the hypocrites that are there like stone. So leave not a stone unturned in trying to kill a messenger. That's the end of the presentation. I just wanted us to look at ourselves and make sure that we don't have, we're not actually tricked by the 1/3 of the hypocrites. Remember, the 1/3 in the Bible mentions that the dragon would cast his tail and cast 1/3 of the stars of heaven down to earth. We don't want to be in that 1/3, the number that will be cast down. We want to stay strong in faith. We want to know the foundation and be ready to defend the foundation, defend it for ourselves. And of course, that foundation is Master Farah Muhammad, that he is Allah in person. That foundation is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and that he escaped the death path, and that's very key. And that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, of course, is the Messiah in our midst. And I wanted to end that by saying, Assalamu alaikum. I hope you all learned something and that this was actually beneficial to you. So thank you for listening.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sister, you have a question?
Yes, I was trying to come off of mute. So that 1/3, I'm just reflecting on that 1/3 being the hypocrites. I'm wondering if that 1/3 could also be like, when you said 1/3 being a hypocrite, because could that be like 1/3 of ourselves, where, because we may not be everybody may not be a hypocrite, but we may exhibit hypocritical behavior at times. So could that also represent the 1/3 of us that we need to murder? Because I know in the lesson some way it says something about you can't reform the devil, you have to murder them. Could that relate to that as well?
Definitely, I believe it can. I believe it can also be referred to ourselves, that maybe 1/3 of us, as we strive to elevate and raise our minds to a higher level, right? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to the history of the moon, that the phases of the moon represents the rise of the black man into himself. We know that the moon was blasted away from the earth. 1/3 of the planet, remember, 1/3 of the planet was blasted away and lost its water to the earth, right? So it would be like a hypocrite being blasted away from the community of believers and losing their faith, right? We don't want to be like that, of course. So we have to do everything in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, especially the lessons. Let us try and see how it fits us. Let us make it a personal study, not to look at other people all the time, but also reflect on ourselves. The making of the devil, that can also refer to us. The grafting of the devil, grafted type, that can refer to us. The colored man can refer to us, right? Everything in the lesson, let's try to apply it to self so we can benefit from the lessons, right? So I think that you are correct in saying that the 1/3 can also spiritually refer to an aspect of maybe our disbelief or us getting a little weak. As I know the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan made a point that the Holy Qur'an has 3 types of believers. There's the foremost, and I forget the other 2, but there's 3 types of believers. We want to be the foremost, of course. So thank you for that question. I think it's very critical that we should look at ourselves too.
Yes, sir. And the next question, when it comes to the problem book, because I know I've looked at it, and myself, I know I get intimidated sometimes. So how do you know, like when you look at the questions to take it, because it seems simple when you look at it, right? Sometimes you look at the question, it's like, okay, mathematically, it seems simple, but is it something where so on the surface it's simplistic, but you're really to look deeper into that question, like it's not as simple as just solving the problem mathematically?
Okay. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that Master Fard Muhammad did not speak one word that we did not have to figure out and actually find out what he meant by what he said. Right? So it's not just to take it on its face value. There's something that he meant by what he said. Right? Now, in a letter that Master Fard Muhammad wrote to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad regarding the problem book, I forget what problem he was dealing with, but he told the messenger in the letter that if he was to read that lesson 50 times, he would begin to see and understand what the lesson was actually saying. So this is why I believe it is important for us to recite by heart and keep reading or reciting it, because as the more you do it, the more you recite it, the more you internalize it, the more of the understanding will begin to rise from yourself. And of course, we all have a personal life where we could actually add on to the meaning and use our own coloring of it, and like how we understand it, because we have our own experiences, we could also add to it. So reading it over and over again is key to understanding it. And also your righteousness. The more righteous you are, the more clean you are, the more you will be able to see and understand what Master Fard Muhammad was actually saying in the lessons, in the problems.
Yes, sir. And we actually have a couple of questions in the chat. The first question, the person asks, can you share any study methods that you use to learn the lessons by heart?
I'll tell you what I did to start. I started to learn my lessons when I was in college. I kind of gave up going to class. So I would go to the lunchroom and just open up my Supreme Wisdom book. And what I would do is start from the beginning, which is instructions to the laborers. I would read over and over again the first sentence, or where it reaches a period. Recite it over and over again until I master it without reading. Once I mastered that, I would take the next sentence and read from what I've known so far to the next sentence over and over again until I know that much. And then I will go further until I finish the whole paragraph. Keep reading that over and over and over again until I master the first paragraph before I continue to the next part of the next paragraph, which will be from the beginning of that paragraph to the period. And then just keep reciting it over and over. Now, it is a mistake to recite one section and then learn the other section and forget the one you just learned. Don't do that. That's why I would start from the beginning and recite all the way to what I've known to that point. Always go back so you don't forget what you learned when you first started. That is the key that I found for me to work. Some others may read the whole thing over and over again. I personally don't do that. I would just, like I said, I will start and go to the period or to the comma, whatever is easiest for you. And once you master that, continue until you finish the whole paragraph and the whole lesson, and then you proceed as you go on. That's what I do.
Yes, sir. Good. That's a good advice, definitely. And the next question we have in the chat is, have you been able to see how the 34 problems relate to the death plot?
Other than what I've shared so far, that's all I can say for now. I know that problem number 6 refers to the second uncle, or the hypocrites at the time, plotting to kill the messenger, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad refers to them as the wicked uncle that took a price to kill the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It speaks about the time when it would happen. Problems number 31 and 32. As I keep reading, I'm sure that more things will come out. I'm trying to look at problem number 34. I'm sure there's something in that problem that may shed more light on it. That's all I can say for now. That's all I can see so far, but I'm sure I'll be able to see more.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the next question in the chat is, why are there so many mentions of the uncles of Master Fard Muhammad and only one mention of the aunt?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that the wife of the uncle can represent the M.G.C in general, but I believe it also has a further reference to the entire nation. If you know anything about the book of Revelation, it speaks about the Messiah marrying unto the bride and the groom. There will be a wedding. It would be that the believers would marry unto the Lamb. The wife, the believers are referred to as wife. In the Old Testament, the children of Israel are referred to as the wife of God. So the wife in another, how would I say, understanding, can refer to the entire nation of believers. But I believe it first refers, of course, to the Muslim woman, the original Black woman. But I don't know why she's only mentioned one time.
Yes, sir. That was a good question. I didn't think about that. And I think our special assistant, Brother West, has some questions for you. Brother West?
Yes, ma'am. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Alaikum salam.
Yes, sir. So I first wanted to ask, is there a difference between the 1933 version of 1933 version of the Supreme Wisdom and the 1934 version?
Say the numbers again, 1934 and 1933.
I believe it was 1933 and 1994.
1994. I believe that there's some differences because you have to remember that, for example, let's take to instruction to the laborers. Originally, there was only the part where Master Fard Muhammad laid down, right? Later on, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad added the footnotes, where it says note, right? That's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the instructions. But at first, it was just Master Fard Muhammad. So it was expanded by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I believe the Honorable Minister Farrakhan Khan asked the believers to stop selling the 1994 version that was being sold at the time because there were some mistakes and errors. Because I know, for example, that in the instructions to the laborers, number 8, the number 8 was not there. It was missing. Instructions number 10, it says the restricted law of Islam is accessed at any time. And any time anyone who fails to be 100% to the law shall be dismissed from his or her post. It was different, right? It was the restricted law of access, right? At any time. It shouldn't be like that. The restrictive law of Islam is our success, period, not our success at any time, period. So it was a little different there. There were some differences. There are many others that I could point out. But other than that, I don't know if there's any more big, major differences. Yes.
Yes, sir. Now, you mentioned in your book that you referred to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the Messiah. How
Yes,
did
sir.
the Honorable Minister Farrakhan rise to become the Mahdi? And what is the difference between the two?
Well, the Mahdi is an Arabic word that means the self-guided one, the one who comes to guide others to the straight path. Well, we understand that these names are titles that have no value unless we actually exemplify the name. The names carry a function. These names are what we can grow into. For example, brother, you are your father's son. You are not a father yet, right? We know who your father is, or some know who your father is. But one day you will become a father, but nobody can say you're not a father when you become a father. Right now, your father is your father, you're not. But you can grow into that title when you fulfill a function of that name carries. The title of Mahdi being the self-guided one, the one that comes to guide others to the straight path. In the table talks, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that Allah has made me equal to him, that there was nobody as close to the master as he is. And he challenges anybody to disprove him on that. So if you become so close to the messenger, when you see one, you see the other, then Mahdi is just a name, a title. It's not spooky. You're not going to get chastised by wearing it. Many people call themselves Mahdi. Many people have the name Mahdi. It's not a spooky name. But if the name carries a function, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has risen to a point where he exercises power now. That is for those that believe that he's still alive and with the master. So yes, fulfilling the function of Mahdi, it is no crime to call him what he is actually manifesting. He is manifesting that title right now. I could call him God and I won't feel no way about it, you know?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Often I've heard Minister Farrakhan state that he has just one more thing to do before his departure.
Yes,
Do
sir.
you have any idea of what that one thing may be? Now, I asked you this question because I know that you have a very unique way of decoding messages.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gave the answer to that. He said that he would have to experience what would be similar to death and come out of it. He would have to go through that in order for him to see his teacher again. Right? That's what he said. He would have to go through what would seem like was death. And then he can go and see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad face to face. That's what I believe the one more thing that he has to do is.
Yes, sir. Now, have you been able to share any of your presentations with the minister himself? If so, what was his take on it?
And which presentation? This is the first presentation I ever did. As I mentioned to Brother Donald, I'm not good at computers. I tried out, see if I could do a presentation. And this is what I was able to come up with. I have not shared it with the minister, so I don't know what he would say or what he has said or anything like that. I only met him once, and that's the Believers meeting in Buffalo that I mentioned, where he says that he was the third uncle. He shook my hand and we talked a little bit. That's the only time he's ever, that I know of, that he's heard of me or what I have to say.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm going to go into our station ID. You are listening to WHID FM. What has Islam done for me? Thank you for doing so. We're extremely humbled since we know you could have chosen something else to do of your time. There is no WHID FM without you. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email us at WHID1919@gmail.com. Also, please subscribe to WHID FM on YouTube. We will return next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, inshallah, and our guest will be Brother Student Minister Qiyam Muhammad. Now, I also wanted to ask, can you tell us how you explain the lessons? What will you suggest for one to receive a deeper understanding of the lessons?
As I mentioned before, the more you recite it over and over again, I believe that you will begin to see deeper into what Master Fra Muhammad wrote and what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote, right? It's by repetition and constantly going over and over again. Of course, studying it, studying every word, parsing the words, finding out the root of the meaning of the words that are used. Cleaning up yourself, your mind, fasting, praying, being righteous, of course, can also clear your mind to receive more of the understanding of what the master meant by what he wrote in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as well. So those two things, cleaning up your mind and heart and reciting the lessons over and over and over and over again, you'll begin to see.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Now in the chat, Muhammad Mosque number 46 is asking, from my study, it appears that lesson number 1 and 2 were examines given to you. that more than just the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Have you read anything that bears witness to that?
Yes, as I mentioned regarding problem number two, lesson number two, actually the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is the one that said that the 40 questions has a reference to a 40-year period where not only the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would be examined, but the actual Nation of Islam would go under examination. So it does refer to us as well, not just the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Lesson number one contains 14 questions. Minister Jabril asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad regarding this, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad responded what the 14 questions of lesson number one refers to. And he said that the 14 here represents 1400 years after the Prophet Muhammad, that time would be given to the time where the resurrection of the Black nation would have to occur within a 1400-year period. I believe that time would begin from the death of Prophet Muhammad. 1400 years later would be the end of that time, which is, I think, is 2032. But that's another subject for another time.
Yes, sir.
You done, Brother West?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sister Janine?
Actually, before we go to my question, Brother West, can you do our station ID?
He did it already.
You did? Oh, okay. All right. So when it talks about the questions, and if someone attempts to attempt this at the problem book, what will be their first step? Well, like to say, I want to go in with this problem book. I want to go in with it. I know I'm going to say a prayer first. That's the first thing I would do. And I'm going to say, Allah, help me as I attempt to answer these questions. Because number one, that was my first question. And then part two of that, have you ever heard the minister say that those questions will be a part of the second examination?
What questions? The lessons?
The problem book, yes, sir.
The problem books?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if specifically he said it, but I know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that Master Prophet Muhammad told us that we would be examined on the lessons. This is why in the table talks of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you can get it. Table talk book, I think it's volume 2. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that we should forget about speaking about the beginning of all things and going so far back into trillions of years. He said that we should be dealing with our lessons because that is what we are going to be examined on. And that Master Prophet Muhammad told him that he will examine us on the lessons. Mm-hmm. Right? So we should be on our lessons because that would be what we'd be examined on.
Yes, and then the other part of that question, what's the first step in going to the problem book? Is it like a certain, because I just wonder the atmosphere you have. It's like you have my dictionary here. Do I have, to be able to analyze, and this is just me, right? I always look at things like I want to look at it in the right frame of mind. I want to interpret the question right. So what would be the steps in doing that?
I would say memorization is first. Memorize them first before you start to see what the figures are mathematically, the multiplying the figures and all of the mathematical equations. I would leave that till after. But the first, recite the problem book, because in the actual words is, I believe, where the true meaning of what the master was trying to get us to see is there. It's in the actual words. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So once you start to recite it, you will begin to see.
Yes, sir. Brother Donald?
Yes, ma'am. Brother Boris, in your book,
yes, sir,
Refuting the Myths, you talk about how the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to the Savior as a prophet. Can you delve into that for a few minutes?
Yes, we all know that when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad first heard Master Prophet Muhammad speak in that first meeting, and he went to shake the Master's hand, Master Prophet Muhammad told him, specifically gave him an instruction to not to say that out loud, or not to repeat it. And he told him, don't speak too much about me while I am here. You can say whatever you want about me when I'm gone. So at that time, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he was given those instructions not to reveal his true identity, he had to find something some kind of name to call him to present to the people at that time. So prophet was definitely a good title to use at that time to represent his teacher. Prophet is not beyond Master Prophet Muhammad, if you understand what a true prophet is, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said a true prophet is a scientist. He called the 24 elders 24 prophets in the book called 15,000 Year History. And we know that a prophet is one who prophesies, one who can see into the future. And we know that the gods are the ones that actually foretell the future and write down what is to transpire for the next 25,000 years. So the title of prophet is not something that, does not actually can refer to Master Farad Muhammad. So he used that title at that time, prophet, to introduce him until he was permitted to actually reveal that he was actually God in person, or Allah in person, when he was gone. So he used that at that time. Because Master Prophet Muhammad was incognito. He was not revealing who he was at that time. And in the book of Malachi says that he had horns coming out of his hand, but there was the hiding of his power. Right? When Master Farad Muhammad was before he was arrested, I think he told the believers that at that time, you have not yet seen me in my royal robes. He was not revealing himself as to who he really was. He was just walking among us as an ordinary human being. He wasn't exercising his power at that time. So that's why he used those titles at that time until the right time.
I've heard people talk about when the Savior was arrested. I know on one particular occasion supposedly, that the officer, once he put him behind the bars and he locked it, when he turned around, the Savior was standing behind him. Have you heard that story before?
No, I haven't. I've heard other stories. I haven't heard that one. There are many stories I've heard. I haven't verified them from the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I heard many believers say different things about what Master Prophet Muhammad did at that time. We've heard that he could take a piece of his hair and magnetize the other hairs and lift them up with his hair. Right. He could bring up images in a glass of water of the people on Mars. Just many things that I've heard, but that's a new one I've heard. That's an interesting one.
How about the one where he was able to dance with a glass of water on his head?
Yes, I've heard that too. I think it was Sister
Ernestine, I think her name was.
Yeah, she wrote a book detailing her experience with Master Prophet Muhammad. I think she related that story. Yeah.
So, Brother Boris, if you were talking to somebody and the conversation came up about God being a man, and they had never heard it put like that before, how would you try to explain that or get them to see?
Yeah, it depends who the person is. Is he a believer in the Bible, the Holy Qur'an? I would have to understand where he's coming from before I begin to present to him that God is a man. Like, I wouldn't use the Bible to prove to an Orthodox Muslim that God is a man. I would have to find out first who that person I'm dealing with is. So I don't know if you could ask the question specifically of who the person is that I'm dealing with. Maybe I could answer that better.
And what about when in the Holy Quran, where it talks about the prophet saying that 3 generations after me will no longer be of me?
Yeah, that's actually not in the Holy Quran. That's in one of the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
The minister definitely uses that often when he's speaking about the Orthodox Muslims, because they have a mindset that, that we just received Islam and we don't know what we're talking about. that they are actually the ones that are supposed to teach us, right?
Mhm.
You know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan actually debated the scholars of Islam in the holy city Mecca. And of course, the minister put them in their place. Basically, that those who profess to be Orthodox Muslims and profess to be, you know, the true Muslims that they are supposed to teach us. Well, when you look at that hadith, where it says that 3 generations after me would no longer be of me, then if they claim to be followers of, you know, Muhammad does not claim them as his own, because these Orthodox Muslims now are far removed 3 generations from him, right? A lot of them are teaching Greek philosophy cloaked under Islam. Yes, sir.
Brother West.
Yes, sir. So in the chat from Muhammad Mosque number 6, we have, how would he explain God being a man to a Sunni Muslim?
Go to Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad. In the Sunnah, it is more clear than the Holy Quran that God is a man. In the Sunnah, it speaks about God having body parts. It mentions in a hadith that when Muhammad fell asleep and he woke up, that he basically Allah put his finger in between his shoulder blades, and he felt the coolness of his fingertip, and he revealed to Muhammad what he revealed. It calls Allah in the Sunnah, he calls him a shakhs, a person, right? Calls him a person. It mentions Allah walking, sitting on a couch, sitting on a stool, putting his foot on a stool. It's just very anthropomorphic. The Sunnah is more easier to use the Sunnah because the descriptions of Allah is very anthropomorphic. And in fact, it gives a description of the God. In one of the visions that Muhammad had about God, Muhammad said, according to the Sunnah, that he saw his Lord in the form of a beardless youth with black straight hair that came up to his ears, right? And that his face was white, which is contrasted to his black oily hair, according to this hadith. So if you present that hadith to an Orthodox Muslims and show them a picture of Master Prophet Muhammad, the image that Prophet Muhammad described is so close to what we have as God in person among us. You know, he was in the form of a beardless youth. And we know that the Orthodox Muslims require you to grow a big beard, right? So Allah appearing as a beardless youth is contrary to what they practice. And we know Master Prophet Muhammad had no beard. He looks like a youth, right? With black, oily hair. His face looked white like a Caucasian. Of course, he was not. So Prophet Muhammad described Master Prophet Muhammad perfectly. And this he called his Lord in the last days. And I guess there are many more. But if you refer to the books by Dr. Wesley Muhammad, he goes deeply into this, especially his dissertation that he did on God. It's called, I forget what it's called because it's not in the English language, but it refers to God being seen and the personification of God, something like that. He also has a book called The Truth of God. He goes into many surahs and the history of Muhammad and the Sunnah to prove that God is a man. So Dr. Wesley Muhammad's books is a good source to refer to if you want to be able to prove to them that God is a man.
Yes, sir. Sister Janine?
Yes, sir. So thank you, Brother West. There's another question in the chat. Sister Cynthia asked, she said, you mentioned a book that had the mathematical portion of the problem book already worked out. What was the name of that book?
NOI Decoded. Nation of Islam Decoded by Rashid L. Muhammad. I think you could Google it, and it should be, I know it was sold on, what do you call that? Anyway, you can find it online, but Rashid L. Muhammad, I think you could find him on Facebook as well. He has other books, but the one where he deals with the mathematical equation was NOI Decoded.
Yes, sir. And another question, when it comes to the Bible, a lot of Christians believe that Jesus is coming back, or they may say that, you know, Jesus is a spirit. What will be your first step? Because I know sometimes we don't want to shake people in their faith, but we want to kind of, you know, spoon feed them to get them to think. How would you go at them with that God is a man concept? Because sometimes they, I don't want to, the way I say it, I want to say it correctly. They don't think God is a man, but then they think that God is coming back.
There's a few verses in the New Testament that refers to God being a man. I can't call it off by heart, but I know that when I think it was the Jews were arguing with Jesus, and Jesus gave an answer where he referred to him and his father as a man. It says, "Isn't it written in your law that the witness of two men is basically necessary?" He says, "The first man is myself, and the other is my father." In the Old Testament, it doesn't use the word man, but he used the word man. It says the witness of two men. And again, he says that the first man was himself, which of course would say that the second man would be his father. So Jesus called his father a man, according to the New Testament. In the book of Revelations, it says that, Revelations 10, I believe, that the mystery of God would be finished after the seventh angel begins to sound. So if Christians believe that God is a mystery or unknown spirit, just refer to them to that verse where, yeah, okay, God has been a mystery, but that mystery of God is supposed to be finished. He will no longer be a mystery. The book of Revelation says that you will see him as he is, right? Every eye shall see him. Well, you cannot see a spirit, you know. So yes, take it to them step by step. The way I do it personally, I would ask questions in a way where it seems that I'm actually trying to learn from them instead of me being condemning in the question. So I would ask them, you know, I read a verse in the Bible that says this. Can you explain that to me? You know, I thought that God was a spirit, but this verse says that God will be seen in the last days. How can you see a spirit? Like, ask questions like that, like you actually don't know, so that you don't make them run away from you, or you don't want them to condemn you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So don't show your hand. Pretend that you're just asking. That's how I would do it.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Thank you for that. Brother Donald?
I can't hear.
On mute.
My bad. Going back to your book again, on the back you talk about someone named Professor Muhammad Abdullah from Pakistan. Who is that?
He was a Sunni imam that was in the community that was established by Boris Muhammad. He lived in Hayward, California. I forget what year he came to America, but he definitely did not come at the time where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was being taught by Master Farad Muhammad. He came much later. But Warithin Muhammad introduced this man on Savior's Day 1976, I believe, and began to teach that this was Master Farad Muhammad, that this Muhammad Abdullah was actually Master Farad Muhammad. And in an interview where Muhammad Abdullah was actually interviewed and he was asked, who he was, and he said, "No, I am not that man that taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad." So no, he was not Master Fard Muhammad. He was just an Orthodox Muslim that came from Pakistan.
Okay. I have one more question. I think we'll begin to wind down. On the back of your book, you're dealing with, here's a question. It says, was Master Fard Muhammad Allah himself, or was he just a vessel of the unseen spirit of God?
I believe he was Allah. He was Allah himself. It is the human being that can wear the attributes of Allah. We know that Allah has 99 plus 1 attributes or names, right? It is only the human being that can manifest these names. We believe that Master Fard Muhammad is able and capable to manifest every one of those attributes himself. There is no attribute floating in space by itself manifesting anything. You need a base. The base is material. The base is the human being, the brain. It is the brain that gives rise to ideas. It is the brain that gives rise to the spirit, to energy. Master Fard Muhammad is Allah himself. There is no spirit jumping into him that is Allah and then jumping out of him at will. No, we don't believe, at least I don't believe that there is no spook or spirit jumping into him as some kind of vessel that he, indwells and then leaves him at will. I don't believe that. I believe Master Fard Muhammad is Allah himself.
Praise be to Allah. Sister Janine.
Praise be Allah. Praise be to Allah. That's really a beautiful session. I know I've been getting messages and chat saying it's a beautiful session, really understanding the whole concept of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad being physically alive. And it's just been beautiful to have it related to the lesson so you can be able to explain. I know first comes belief, but then comes understanding. So it's definitely been beautiful. We do have a few announcements, family, before we close out. We humbly invite you to tune in every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you will hear the teachings live. The speakers and their subjects will be announced on social media and, of course, NOI.org. Each Wednesday, you can tune in to the Time and What Must Be Done series. It's actually hosted by student minister Daniel Muhammad and is featuring the minister himself. On Fridays at 2 p.m., we celebrate the best of days with Jumu'ah prayer from Mas Mariam, featuring Brother Student Imam Sultan Muhammad. For complete details and information on how to obtain books and lectures by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Miss Louis Farrakhan, please visit us at NOI.org, where you can also sign up for your digital Final Call newspaper subscription and also Final Call radio. You can listen to it 24/7. If you don't have the app, please download it on your phone, your iPad, get it on your computer. If you want to listen something that your whole family can tune in, that you don't have to censor, that you don't have to wonder what's coming on the radio next. You can always get the teachings and the truth from Final Call Radio. And before I go back to Brother Donald, Brother Boris, do you have any closing comments for us?
I would just like to thank you all for inviting me to share my thoughts and what I've learned throughout my years in the Nation of Islam, and allowing me to defend the foundation of what we are to believe. That's all I want to do, is help the believers to get a better understanding, help the believers to be able to defend their foundation. And if anything, if that's all I am here to do, I am glad that I'm able to do that. And I thank you for allowing me to do that on your show. So thank you very much. As I greet you all, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Brother Donald?
Yes, ma'am. Brother Boris, thank you so much, beloved. You are definitely being a help. And there are several people in the chat room asking about your presentation, your what do you call that when you put it up
Your
like
PowerPoint.
that?
PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Don't worry, I have the same problem as you, brother.
Yeah. So I advise them to contact you through Facebook. Was there another way you want them to try to reach out to you?
No, that's all I have. Facebook. I think my email is there, but I hardly use email. And you should know that, Brother Dunn.
Right.
It's hard for me to check my email unless you tell me to check it. But Facebook is what I deal with.
Okay, so I'm
Yes,
sure
sir.
you'll be hearing from people on Facebook, and we thank you again for coming back on the show. What you shared is much needed in this hour. We need all the light we can get, especially when it comes to our supreme wisdom, because that's the basis, the foundation of what we say we believe in, and we won't be able to pass this next examination if we don't study.
That's right.
All of us got to use the time wisely while we're shut in to study more and more and more. Thank you again, Brother Boris. So at this time, I'm going to turn you over to Brother Wes Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Let us welcome Brother Donald's latest book, I Never Knew That I Am All That. It is a wonderful children's book that teaches the youth about the events that our ancestors encountered. This fantastically illustrated book can be purchased on Amazon for the price of $16.99. So let's support our brother by going out and grabbing a copy today. Thank you.
Praise be to Allah. Let us have prayer, Brother Wes.
Yes, sir. Attention prayer. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Adana sirata mustaqim. Sirata ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Alaikum salam.
And family, if you want to greet our brother, you can definitely greet him as we play our outro music.
Thank you, Brother Boris. Always a pleasure, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Boris. Thank you so much for all of your
Alaikum
words of wisdom.
Welcome, sister.
I want you to understand and know the time. It's time that we are accepted and respected by both man and mankind. You know, the scripture says that God would choose those that are despised and rejected. And we have been that and cast aside. No one wanted us, and no one cared for us. And the worst thing about it, we never cared for ourselves.